Hello and welcome. Show Me Mo Facilities, School Facilities, podcast listeners, viewers, and folks that have listened to the first 5 episodes. We're in for episode 6. This is going to be a fun one because I have some experience with this guest. I did something last week that was, in a word, awesome. Charlie Branham and the team at Missouri School Plant Managers Association put together an amazing one-day winter workshop for their members. They had 96 seating for 96, and they sold out. And it was really, really cool. And what was cool about it was the workshop consisted of 3 sessions. One, getting the lead out, talking about lead water, testing for lead in water. The second was the importance of facility directors working with the school nurses. And last but not least, coming up, rounding out the third presentation, was my guest today, Mr. Chris Ruth. And we talked about building management systems. And we just had a lot of fun. And I said, man, we got to get you on the podcast because we got to share this beyond the 96 people that were in the seats last week in St. Louis. And so I got him on. He's going to talk to us here about building management systems. And there's some really cool stuff. But there's a lot of best practices and things to think about that are often overlooked that he's going to share his expertise. So, Chris, first, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, where you've been, and then we'll dig right into the wonderful world of BMS systems.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you inviting me back, and that was a great intro. Yeah, that was a great session last week that Charlie and the folks at School Plant Managers put on. They always put on a good show, and I appreciate being a part of that. I work for a company called Integrated Facility Services. We're a mechanical contractor with offices in St. Louis and Columbia and Rolla and down at Lake of the Ozarks. IFS is a full service mechanical contractor. We do heating and cooling, plumbing, building automation, fire protection, and refrigeration. And I manage our building automation division in outstate Missouri. So I oversee all of our building automation projects. I do the estimating and engineering on those projects, and I run a team of programmers and technicians that install that equipment and get it started up and commissioned. And we maintain those systems for our customers and make sure that everything is operating efficient and maintaining those comfort levels.
I always like to dig in a little deeper. How long have you been in this line of work? And did you grow up and say, hey, when I grow up, I want to have complete oversight and control of buildings and help make an impact in saving energy while providing a healthy and learning or living environment?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't my first choice. I've been with IFS for almost 18 years. This April will be 18 years for me. I started here part time as a graphic designer. I was actually going to school for multimedia and web design,
Mm-hmm.
and they hired me to improve the quality of the graphical user interfaces that are designed as part of a building automation system. When they were looking at competitors in the market at that time, they realized that it was an area where they had some opportunity for improvement. So they hired me on part time for that, and I spent my first year working 3 days a week, just cranking out graphics for them. They would slide me a set of blueprints and say, "Here you go, make graphics for this." And then over time, I started to learn the industry a little bit more. I had a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of training on programming. But then when I started to learn the HVAC industry, I became a programmer and then a project manager. And yeah, for the last 3 years, I've been managing all of our controls operations across Missouri. So that's my story in a nutshell.
It's a pretty cool journey.
It is.
I
It
think
is.
that, and it gives you a little bit of a taste and a flavor for everything. So you figured out what fills your cup and gives you fulfillment, which is pretty cool. And I could tell when I put you in the hot seat. For the people that weren't at the event last week, we had 2 tall stools in the front, and I called them the hot seat, and we would put people on it. And you did a great job, and you had the
Thank
timing down. I didn't know you had a stopwatch going, and I was just so
you.
impressed with it. You were within like 45 seconds of your time limit, so that was pretty impressive.
I tend to end up being one way or the other. I'm typically a fast talker, so either I breeze through it way too quick, and then I gotta try and fill a lot of time, or I go too deep into the weeds, and then I run long on
Yeah.
presentations. I've done several for school plant managers and other organizations, and I'm really comfortable in that setting, but I gotta keep the leash on to make sure I don't go too far.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about building management systems, and let's I'm gonna go ahead and be Mickey the Dunce in this episode because I think I know enough to be dangerous. I graduated high school in the early 90s, and I intended to never go back into a school again because I thought 5 years of high school was plenty.
Yeah.
And I was out for 2 years, and I got into this industry as a provider, a vendor provider, and over the years, the last 25 plus years, I've become a partner with many groups, and I found that my cup is full by helping schools, and seeing what kind of impact I can make in the environments. I can't help them with the curriculum. I was not a good student from that perspective, but if I could help make that environment, because in my professional speaking, I share with folks that there's roughly 3 million kids that are homeless or in foster care today, and so that 8 hours that they get at the school 5 times a week might not be a big deal to most, but it's every deal for them. It is
Yep.
the best environment for them to be in. And so with that said, when I was in high school in the 90s, you drove by a school in the dead of winter up here in Boston and all the windows were open. And that's because the thermostats were broken and they were all what some would call, I believe, pneumatic controls, right?
Yep.
Turn dials, you had to go to the individual controls, or you may have had some sort of lawn works or backnet system that was relatively primitive or lockdown proprietary. So in the whole scheme of things, sadly school districts are low bid, and the company will come in, provide the low bid and say, well, now we're in here, they're going to have to keep us here, and that rarely happens. And it's advanced, and the level in which the technology, the interoperability, all that stuff is advancing at a far greater rate in the last 20 years than the previous 100 years, right?
Yeah.
So walk us through a little bit of what's a building management system's capabilities today are, what they control, and how accessible are they? Do you have to be in district, or what should you look for?
Sure. Yeah, building management systems are they really have grown a lot. One of the roots was really HVAC controls, and I think that's still a term that's used quite a bit. Is heating and cooling controls, and really that is a big part of our business. And the reason for that being the ability to recognize savings and all of that on the HVAC side. So much of a building's energy is used for the heating and cooling of the building. So proper control on that is very easy to calculate an ROI and to recognize savings on that. But over the years, the industry itself started to realize that there's a lot of opportunity to add more to that, to the point where we now see smart buildings and fully integrated building management systems where a single control system will take care of the heating and cooling in the building. It can take care of all of the lighting in the building, the access and security to the building as well. And we even see some stuff get into a little bit more on the process side, which we don't see too much in schools, but even some obscure things, smart blinds in hallways and common areas can be controlled by a building management system as well. So data room monitoring systems and all that. So it really the automation of a building's equipment has grown far beyond just the heating and cooling side to really encompass total buildings.
You just hit something that's really kind of a cool piece that I thought was amazing. Horry County, South Carolina, not in Missouri, but they do some great things. It's Myrtle Beach. They have some net positive producing schools, meaning they're producing through renewable energy sources more energy than they're using and putting it back on the grid. One of the things that they had that I thought was just so fascinating that I never had seen before was they had automatic window treatments, shades, blinds that would adjust according to the level of sunlight, how warm it was, and all of that. Are those run through your building management system, or is that run through something? Because I never got to ask. I walked by and the blinds were all the way down. I walked by a couple hours later and they were all the way up. And I said, "What's that?" And they said it's adjusted based on time of day, amount of direct sunlight, all these pieces. Is that something you program in the building management system and then it just does that, or?
Yeah, it definitely can be, and that's really where we talk about the open protocols and the ability to integrate this stuff together. A lot of that stuff does do its own job, and it can run completely independent, where you can have your HVAC system that's running a certain type of controls, and then your lighting system that's doing something different, and your smart blinds that are doing their own thing, with their own sensors and their own motors on the blinds, their own lumen sensors in the building and photo eyes outside the building that can do its own work independently and do the task that it needs to do. But when you talk about integrating that into a system, it definitely can be. And that's where, we get to the conversations about the ease of use for the end users to be able to have a single interface to be able to access all of these various systems in their building without having to say, okay, I need to make some adjustments on my blinds, which I haven't done since last year. So now I've got to go dig up the literature and the stuff that I need and hope to find all this and hope everything still works. And then they don't visit it for a year again. And so they each of them can do their own tasks individually, but where we really see the benefit for schools is when all of that is consolidated together into a single building management system.
Yeah. This is a question we didn't cover this, and I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm only doing it because I know you can cover it. Building management systems have built into them nuisance alarms or critical alarms, which in essence, and correct me, I'm Mickey the Dunce here.
Sure.
I like to call it catastrophic failure avoidance in most cases.
Yep.
One of the biggest challenges that I've seen in my outside experience is when working with teams, they get tons of nuisance alarms and they get so many of them to a point that they're like, it's not real, right? It's a variable of temperature in a room that goes from unoccupied to highly occupied. The temperature can shift dramatically. It's not because the heat's running too long or the air conditioning is not running along. It's just a lot of body heat in there or some other aspects. How does one, are those all built into the building management system from the manufacturer? Is that something that you guys adjust and work with people on? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a lot of that stuff really comes down to how the system is programmed and configured. I'd like to say that the majority of those nuisance alarms are avoidable if the system is configured and commissioned properly. And you're absolutely right on that. And that's the thing that we see far too often, where you may have a certain space temperature that throws alarms regularly. A vestibule, for example, that anytime it's cold outside with a north wind, that vestibule is going to be cold and it's going to be throwing alarms all day, every day. And then somewhere in this list of vestibule alarms, your boiler fails and you get this boiler failure alarm that gets missed because it's been ignored because of a bunch of nuisance alarms. So the alarm parameters for all of that and the sequence of operation for all of that should both be looked at to make sure that they're working together. Every space is a little different. I'd like to say that there's a rule of thumb for what set points and alarm thresholds and stuff should be at. But it changes, and that's really where the conversation with the end user, with the school facilities folks, or the occupants in that classroom are really consulted and talked to, and the human behavior part of it is something that gets overlooked quite a bit in our industry, because we focus on the industry standards and we say, okay, this is what the temperature should be and this is where it should alarm and that's what we're going to put it at, and that's it. But when you talk to the people in the building, the teachers or the staff that are in that room all day, every day, the staff that's cleaning it afterwards and prepping it, and the evening class that's using it, and you learn their behaviors, you can really learn a lot about how that space is being treated. To be able to say that, you know what, at this time of day, on these certain days, this is what the temperature needs to be. We've got a full class of 35 students, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And Tuesday, Thursdays, it's reduced classes, and we only have 5 students in there. So when you're looking at that, the demand in the space has changed. So your set points can change and your alarm parameters can change. And unfortunately, all of that information doesn't show up in a specification or on a set of prints. That's where the good contractors set themselves apart by really engaging on that level, to learn how these spaces are being used, and not just jamming in what it is and say, here you go, deal with it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, one, the building management system shouldn't be a set it and forget it. It's not something that, we set it up. We'll say a new construction project, and I'm going to touch on this specific scenario because it's heartbreaking what one school up here is going through. So it's not a set it and forget it. You shouldn't have an expectation of, hey, we have this new construction project, or we have this remodel, putting in this state of the art. Because we're talking about smart buildings, right? We're talking about getting smarter. Yes, they are, but they do need human engagement, modification, adjustment as times change, people change, environments change. You do need to have accessibility, and I guess this is my question to you, because this is a story that if it hasn't made national news, it will make national news. There is a state-of-the-art school up here that got a new building management system that was controlling the lighting, and the lighting has been in locked on position for the last almost 2 years. The entire building has been locked on, and they're proactively manually turning off lights, and in some cases removing bulbs from lights, which is still juice going to those ballasts in those places. And what happened was, the company that did the install has been sold a couple of times, and now the company that's got the ability is got a $1.7 million price tag to retrofit and rebuild. And so it's about a 7-part question I just gave you, which is, one, confirm that this isn't a set it and forget it environment when it comes to this smart equipment. 2, what are some best practices to look for? I think that the bright, shiny object and the latest and greatest technology is fantastic, but there should be some homework done. And then 3, how can a school district or school, or anybody for that matter, empower themselves greatest to minimize risk that, company's going to go out of business, or who does what when? I guess, what's the best practice on that? So I just gave you a long-winded 7-part question that I expect you to answer in 2 minutes or less,
I think
or
I got them
3
all.
or whatever.
I think I got them all here. I'm jotting them
Yeah.
as you go. Your set it and forget it and best practices. Fortunately, those 2 parts of the question have a very similar answer. And you're absolutely right. It's the old adage of the car isn't as good as the day you drive it off the lot, and the same thing can be said for HVAC equipment, lighting and controls and everything else. During the startup of a system, whether it's a new system, new construction, or a retrofit, you go through that initial commissioning process, and you make sure that everything is doing exactly what it should be. And then if you walk away from it and don't look at it again, it's going to get out of whack. And if we think about what's happening, as we say, in the field, in the building itself, these building automation controllers are in essence computers. They're microcontrollers with memory and some sort of processor, and they're just computers that are sitting there running and chugging all day, every day to do a job. On the output side, you've got things like modulating actuators on dampers that spend all day opening and closing and opening and closing. And man, you would like to think that every single time you tell it to go all the way open, that it goes all the way open. But that one time that it slips or sticks or something, now the next time you're changing it. So you can't just set it and forget it. And it's one of those things that needs eyes on it pretty regularly. And there's several ways to approach that. We see the terms retro commissioning and ongoing commissioning that get brought up a lot when it comes to buildings and when it comes to control specifically, to be able to continually revisit those things. Unfortunately, that typically comes at the cost of one thing that none of us have, and that's time. And we kind of talked about this last week in schools themselves. We're seeing schools that are adding more and more buildings, or additions to buildings. They're adding more square footage for facility staffs to take care of, while seeing a reduction in workforce. And that's one of those things where, unfortunately, when you're doing your best to put out fires, you're not really getting ahead on any sort of preventative maintenance, or commissioning. And when you are, it's going to be filters and belts is about it. So that the direction of forgetting it happens a lot, where it's been said and they just walk away. When you get to a point where it's time to troubleshoot something on a control system, the amount of time that it takes, depending on how long it's been since it's been touched, will often lead people to just disconnect things. This damper that we're talking about, that sits there and has been doing its job or trying to do its job, and now it's not working. Instead of spending the time to get into it, we pull the actuator off of it, we crank it closed, and now it just sits there. And it's going to stay closed forever and ever because that actuator is sitting over here or unplugged. So, catching these things when they're in their problem phases can be difficult if you don't have the time to do it. But we're seeing building automation systems realize the need for that, and our industry as a whole is becoming a little bit more intelligent as far as how it handles those things. So when we have conversations about alarming, and making sure that alarming is proper, to where when you're getting an alarm on your damper that is stuck open or not opening all the way, that it's actually meaningful. But even then, it just ends up on the list, right? You got an alarm list over here, you've got your work order list over here, your phone's ringing because you got people that are uncomfortable or unhappy, and it's hard to get through all of it. So we're seeing a new trend in automation systems that is called integrated fault detection and diagnostics, or IFDD for short. And these diagnostics are built into where, when you have a problem like that, it'll actually give you a checklist of things that you can verify to help you with the troubleshooting process. And a properly programmed automation system is going to know what those things are, because we write the sequence for that. So that one damper that's doing its job has a sequence written for it, and we do a lot of checks on that sequence to make sure that it's doing what it needs to be doing. Mm-hmm. So I should be able to look at it and say, okay, this is working, and this is working, and this is working, but this last one here is not. And if I can capture that information and publish that to a building automation system so that the end user looks at it and says, this is the problem here that we need to address, this is why this actuator is not working. Now all of that exploratory time that we did not have, so this job didn't get done, is reduced, but we're still getting that accomplishment of the retro commissioning or the ongoing commissioning. So best practices, set it and forget it, I think is encompassed in that conversation. One of the questions to ask would be, what's, if you have an existing building automation system or you're in the market for a new building automation system, one question that I would encourage the end users to ask is what sort of integrated fault detection diagnostics, what sort of alarming capabilities, what sort of ongoing commissioning capabilities are there to help lessen that load so that they don't have to do it all themselves. That was best practices and set it and forget it. And I think your next question or next several questions had to do with again, more of those questions on what to ask.
Well, what to ask and how do you get comfortable? I mean, this school that's dealing with this challenge, they're a great district. I know their leadership. They've got amazing leadership. To me, I'm sure that's, businesses, all businesses or most businesses should have the mindset of wanting to be successful and to make a difference in their client's life. There are those out there, sadly, that show up, spray it, and see you later. And there's a number of them, and sadly, many of them are in the construction business.
Sure.
And so, my question, I guess, is, what are some, I think that there's I guess my question is, how do you find the balance with reliable technology that's been in the market? Because technology, the second it hits the street, is already outdated, right? The second I get my iPhone 14, it's like the car, right? You drive the car off the lot, it's not new anymore. I got my iPhone 14. that was developed 2 years ago.
Right.
R&D's already got iPhone 16 probably already played out and ready to go 2 years from now. So I guess what would be the healthy balance, or what would be where do you look to say, all right, I need something that's bulletproof and proven technology that's been in the market, and then there's got to be a middle ground to, this is the latest greatest spaceship that's going to take me to the moon and back in 2 minutes and give me a great environment. Is that a good question? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to word it properly, but I think that there's people that are out there, especially through COVID, right? When you looked at COVID, like the second COVID hit, all of a sudden we had workstations where you walked up to it and it scanned your brain and it told you whether or not you right. But it was a flash in the pan. People paying $5,000, $10,000 for entry systems that were doing body scans, and we thought that was going to be a requirement. It's gone, and I think that there's something to be said about, to a point, of building management systems. And I with 18 years in the business, you've probably seen a lot of things that work and a lot of things that didn't work. So what are some things to look for?
I've seen a lot of trendy things that pop up. There was one once upon a time that I saw that would actually use RSS feeds or something to post to social media, and the building automation system would post to social media, and it's just something that never caught wind, but it seemed like the right thing to do at a time. So there's a lot of trends and stuff out there that are just like you're saying, that this is it for now, and then it's just gone. I think my closing remark at our session last week is kind of one of the biggest things, making sure that the investment that you're making is sustainable on a building automation system. We hear so much about sustainability in buildings and sustainability in schools, and there's a big focus on the building itself, the turf, the appliances, and all of that. And I think, again, when you get behind the scenes, all of this stuff that's hidden behind walls and ceilings gets overlooked. But finding something that's sustainable on that front is important as well. Industry standard for years has been BACnet. The Building Automation Control Network is industry standard protocol for years.
So whatever you're doing, make sure the words BACnet are in there.
Make sure BACnet is on it. And I would take it a step further that BACnet has an entity called the BACnet Testing Laboratory that certifies that the products that say they talk BACnet actually talk BACnet properly. There's a lot of boxes that you can check that says that this product talks BACnet without it having gone through the rigorous testing that it takes to be a BTL certified product. Not knowing the ins and outs of the project that you discussed with the lighting issue, something of that magnitude tells me that it's along the lines of a rip and replace. I don't think that is a change out of a front end or a licensing issue. If we're talking $1.7 million, somewhere around there, that to me tells me that we're ripping everything out and replacing everything. And those conversations are hard to have when you go to somebody, especially if it's a newer system, and you say, hey, there's no way to integrate to this. There's no way we can add on to this. You're not happy with the product that you have. You're not happy with the service that you're getting from your service provider. But in order for us to be able to help you at all, we got to rip this whole thing out and start over. It's just not a sustainable model. But installing a BACnet system, a BACnet building automation system, means that if you don't like the controls, you get to a point that you don't like them, they're bought out or go out of business, or a front end controller fails, or you don't like the service that you're getting, that you can make a change on the fly without that conversation of, hey, we need to rip all of this out and start over. And that can be significant. I mean, you could be talking about, an entire change out of a proprietary system. I've done schools that are, $300,000, $350,000 just in controls change outs from a proprietary system, where you can front end a BACnet system for a tenth of that amount. Don't hold me to any of those prices, but that's, it's all scalable, and that's a very different conversation. And like you said, with schools, money's always in the conversation when you're having these conversations. And if we've got to have a conversation about removing proprietary systems to that magnitude, then unfortunately it's one of those things that we just end up dealing with. And
well, I mean, the utility bill for a 400,000 square foot high school that has every light set in the on position, it's crazy how quick $1.7 million will add up in utility use, labor use of people going around and physically turning these off, and then not, management of, hey, did we have the bulb out of this light or did we not have the bulb out of this light? So it better to have those difficult conversations sooner than later, because you'd hate to waste $1.7 million in utilities and then have to put $1.7 million to start saving in utilities.
Well, and what happens, when you're looking at a project like that becomes cost prohibitive because of the magnitude of it, then you look back at our previous conversation about set it and forget it. These dampers that were abandoned in place, either closed to where we're not bringing in any fresh air from the outside, and think about the impact that has, especially coming out of an airborne pandemic. No fresh air is, man, we can't have this thing closed down. We can't have this thing locked all the way open, because then we're bringing in a bunch of air that we have to condition, and we're wasting a ton of energy to be able to overcome that load. And those are the sort of things that, when we look at cost prohibitive projects, that those just continue to sit there. And unfortunately, it's stuff that I've seen before in schools where, the staff size, like I said, has changed. So stuff will get abandoned in place or locked open or locked closed for the sake of ease of use and convenience, because of a failed automation system or a failed controller or poor support on the automation system. And it's risky. It's risky. It puts the equipment at risk. It puts the indoor air quality at risk. It puts a lot of that at risk because it just gets left there. So, to avoid having a conversation about a cost prohibitive project, just make sure that the equipment that you're buying is BACnet. And that's not just the controls themselves. The industry, again, is seeing this trend and has adjusted. So now when you're buying boilers, when you're buying chillers, when you're buying package equipment, when you're buying lights and you're buying these fixtures and all of this stuff, it's all coming with BACnet options on it. So to not make those decisions when you're in the purchasing or specification phase, you're running the risk of having something that's not sustainable.
Well, I was going to cover one more thing, but I want to cover something. My question to you is, why would anyone today not buy a system that's BACnet?
I would say either they're already stuck, they're being misled, or they're being or it comes down to pricing. There are some.
Is there a dramatic price difference between something that's BACnet and not BACnet?
I wouldn't say dramatic. I mean, it's definitely there's a lot. There's a lot of cases where adding a BACnet communication board to a piece of device is an an additional cost. So when you're buying a boiler, you do have to pay extra for a BACnet card. We're talking a couple percentages. It doesn't double the price to make a boiler a BACnet boiler. And that's the case across most equipment. Or you're in so deep or so long term with a proprietary service that it's cost prohibitive to make that change. Or the person that's provided you with a proprietary system is misleading you, telling you that BACnet is dead or dying or going away. And I can assure you that it's very much not. Asheville has a standing committee for BACnet that's a completely regulated third party. It's not owned by anyone. It is very much an open protocol, and it's here to stay.
Yeah, I don't know when it came out, but I learned about BACnet in LawnWorks in 1997. I don't know if LawnWorks is still around or if that's something.
It is.
But they were talking about BACnet not working, and it was and back then every system was proprietary. Every single one. I mean, it was, and that was the beginning. And they said, no, BACnet will never. It won't. It does. It's not going to be here forever. It was kind of like the internet back then. The that's not going that's not going to go anywhere. You got to dial into a phone and make funny noises. And now look at us today, right? So
we still have some building automation systems that are on analog.
Oh yeah,
we keep a few analog lines open for that purpose, but No, but I mean, BACnet's been, development began in the '80s. It's been around for a long time,
Yeah.
and it's been industry standard for several years. I want to say 2008, but I'm not 100%
Yeah.
sure if that was the first.
I won't hold you to it, but I'll have you
Yeah,
confirm it for our next time, because I'd like to have you on again. And before we wrap up, um, one of the things that really it hit home. I actually made a comment, and I brought Paul, who I had come out from Boston with me, out to St. Louis last week. Was you made a comment about making sure you have secure remote accessibility, right?
yeah,
You don't want to have it so that you can only access your controls in district or on your network, but at the same time, you want to have that remote accessibility, and you put the word secure in there. And if you can touch a little bit on that, because I thought about what you said, and it triggered, because we hear so much about remote accessibility, but you made such a point to use the word secure in there. Um, I'd love to learn for you to share
yeah.
more on why and what that looks like.
Yeah, secure and convenient is one of those things that is a hard balance to find between those two. Um, the as our industry shifts, we're seeing a lot more IP-based devices. Actually, BACnet has an IP protocol as well, so we're seeing a lot of stuff that is starting to live on networks. And depending on how networks are structured or the infrastructure for a particular building, school, what have you, they can be riding on same networks or same VLANs as more critical information. I hope that that is not a common practice. I know in a lot of cases that is not, where um, uh, critical sensitive information is kept completely separate network wise from any other non-critical systems. But we've seen issues before with retailers where the building automation system and a point of sale system reside on the same network, and in an unsecure building automation system that's forward facing to the real world with default usernames and passwords, the right people with the wrong intentions can access anything on your network by going that route. So making sure that that is secure, a secure product, and that the network access to it is secure as well. But there's got to be a little bit of a conversation about the convenience of that too. Having a secure connection that requires the use of a desktop environment through a VPN isn't really conducive. Again, when we talk
Mm.
about smaller facility sizes coming larger square footage. I think the example that I used last week is the guy standing on a roof and gets a
Mhm.
phone call about a piece of equipment for another school that's 20 miles away.
Right.
Need to be able to pull it up on your phone, on your iPad, and be able to see the information that's going on in that building, so that you don't have to go down to your truck, drive over there, go up to the roof after you've packed up, and talk to several people on your way out of the school, and then several people on your way into the new school. You could be going hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, throw a lunch break in there, depending on the time of day. From the time you get that initial phone call to the time you actually see the unit, it could be a significant amount of time. So, using the building automation technology and being able to see it on a mobile device is important. So, you've got to find that balance between the convenience of being able to access it securely and being able to see it without having to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Mhm.
And there are, again, a lot of products out there that are very forward thinking in that sense, and they know that you have to provide that. If you have a product that's not able to be secure, then it's not one that you want to go too far down. So again, another one of those questions to ask for the end users is, what is the security and accessibility of this product look like, and this system look like? If I've got 8, 9 schools and I've got a staff of 2 or 3, how easy is it for us to use your system, and how safe is it to make sure that we're putting our IT folks' minds at ease. They've got a lot of devices and a lot of pieces, and as this technology continues, there's more and more stuff that's getting put on their networks that they're not used to seeing. Once upon a time, it was servers, workstations, and
Yeah.
and that's it. we've got printers and cameras and phones, and everything is touching the network these
Yeah,
days.
people's devices from outside. I mean, you're talking,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah.
making sure that we can check those boxes for the IT people as well, is an important thing to ask.
Yeah, the timing of this discussion, I just got off a call with an association in another state, and they were asking me some of my thoughts, and I said, you should really, when you're looking at technology, whatever it is, if it has to do with your two mobile workforces in your district, you have two mobile workforces in the district, the facilities department and the IT department, they need to have products that are built mobile first, mobile in mind. And that you're spot on. That scenario of a facility director having to go up on a roof to be checking on something, whether it's a leak, whether it's a rooftop unit, whether it's getting Billy or Sally's kickball off the roof and there's nobody else to do it, and then getting the phone to ring and saying, hey, it's too hot, it's too cold or something, and it's on the other side of town, their workstation is 2 miles away in the shop. For them to be able to provide that exceptional customer service that everybody knows, loves, and deserves, for them to be able to go onto their phone securely and be able to make that modification or change or just check on that space, I think is really something that's vital in today's work environment for facilities. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Schools, sadly, public K-12 schools, I think this hits everywhere, including Missouri, wildly understaffed, under budget. They don't have the budget that they need to do things. So becoming more efficient and effective with what they have is key. So no, this is all good stuff, man. I could sit here and talk to you for a couple hours. And that's why I say we'll make you kind of a regular person on here. But I think we've filled everybody's brains, getting them started with some ideas and thoughts. And this is one of those things. Our listeners are mostly facility professionals in the great state of Missouri. There's some people around you in Kansas and Texas and others that have reached out to me and said that this is a great podcast. But the mindset is we all should know this, right? We should all know this stuff. And there's a lot of folks coming in that are new. There's some people that are in districts that have schools that are 30 plus years old each, that they have no experience with these systems. And they could be coming into their first experience at the end of their career, and they're going, oh man, what do I do? How do I do it? I think that's how some of these non-lawn work systems probably come in, is this could be a facility director's first experience with latest technology building management systems, and maybe somebody sold them something. So this is great. One of the things that impressed me with you, we've had multiple conversations, you and I, we shared the stage last week. You're not a sales guy. You're not pushing what your business sells or provides. You're a provider of information for people to make the best decision with the information that they gather. So, how does somebody get a hold of you? What's the best way to reach you? Put your information there, and I can make sure that it's in the show notes as well.
Thanks. Yeah, that means a lot. Best way to reach me, cell phone and email. I mean, I'm our company, our industry, is a service industry. I've been here, like I said, 18 years. My phone has been on for 18 of them. When you're dealing with facilities, and we do a lot more than schools. The schools is actually, I just did some year-end analysis, and K through 12 is our biggest vertical market, which is really exciting. But when we're dealing with pharmaceuticals, hospitality, and that sort of stuff, and even with schools, you can't wait 2 or 3 days. You call me on a Thursday, I can't tell you, well, it's going to be Wednesday next week before I can take a look. When you got a school full of kids and it's hot or it's cold, so we really focus on the service side. Telephone number, I can just shout them out, and
go right ahead.
My phone number is 314-210-6213. Like I said, it's always on. I'm always happy to answer any questions about building automation or anything like that. Email is a great way to reach me as well. chrisr, CHRISR, at INT like integrated, F like facility, S like services.com. That's our website as well, intfs.com. Lots of good information there. And Yeah, I enjoy talking about this. It's a real passion of mine. I've been in it for a long time. I've done a lot of these presentations, and I try and keep them as light and informative as I can. Um, I do a lot of sales as well, but I find that if you're a good source of information, a reliable source of information, you're straightforward with people, then the other stuff just kind of comes. So
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that feedback. That does mean a lot. I really try hard to just keep it about the industry and keep it about the people. That's most important to the listeners is their facilities and more importantly their students and making sure that that's all taken care of first and the other stuff will come second. So
Yeah,
phone's always happy to answer questions.
there's no cookie cutter school. It's not, they're not all just square buildings with flat roofs. Some have slanted roofs, some are one floor, some are two floors, some are five floors. They all have their own unique intricacies, and to have people in industry that look at that and don't just say, well, I did it here, so it should work there, is vital and important to the success of any initiative with the building. So
Yeah.
no, that's great. No, we'll put all that in the show notes, and appreciate you sharing that with everybody and giving us some of your time today. And like I say, we'll have you back on again, and maybe we'll do the version 2.0 and 3.0 if there's something that's happening in the space. Ping us and tell us that you need to get back on and share with us the new body scanning, heat sensing design scanner that ties in with the building control system and hits the thermostat up and down and puts a proper mood lighting and
Sure.
color of the bulb. So
Well, there's definitely a lot to talk about. We kind of hit 30,000 square foot view. We can always take a deep dive into the controllers themselves, talk about lighting. A couple big topics for little teasers for future conversation is a really good conversation about the relationship between building automation and energy management, which is very important for schools. When we talk about green buildings, that's a very big conversation, especially in the state of Missouri. I sit on the board of directors for the Missouri Gateway Green Building Council, and they do projects for Missouri Green Schools and the Green Schools Quest, and um, 50, 60, 70 schools a year participating in projects around being green. And the energy is a big part of that when we talk about the energy management side. So there's a big conversation to be had there about energy and
yeah, no, I think that's a great episode for the future. I just read, I think it's Boston University just made a huge investment into having the greenest building, most environmentally least impactful building, and it cost a whole lot more than the return on investment. And so I think that's a conversation for us to have at a later date of, when do we stop looking just at the cost savings, but look at the environmental impact that we can make and what that looks like, because that's a real thing. I think that whatever you want to talk about with climate change and everything else, I think that the reality is the more we use, the less we have. And if we can find ways to use less or find something that we can use over and over again, I think those are real topics. And you want to talk about Mickey the Dunce. I'm Mickey the Dunce with building management system. I'm way out there with that stuff. So I'd love to pick your brain on that in a future episode.
Yeah, well, and we see these schools that are adapting it for their facilities specifically. There's a trickle down effect too, and a lot of those schools that are doing those projects and focusing on the energy side, we see that become part of their culture in their school and becomes part of their curriculum. So it's one of those things where like I said, the biggest focuses of your listeners are on their facilities and more so on their students, and so there really is a conversation that's beneficial on all fronts. And yeah, we like to save energy. Saving energy is saving money. You can do a lot of that with building automation, but when you talk about the environmental responsibility and all that, it's a great conversation. I'm looking forward to having with you.
Well, we will do that, and we'll get it on the calendar. So
Great.
appreciate your time, my friend, and that'll give us I'll tell you what, Charlie Branham, the executive director of Missouri School Plant Managers Association, he tells me, he says, and we talk about this because I was the one that said it. I said the average The average drive to and from school or the average commute in the country is 27 minutes. And so we're going to make these podcasts 20 to 30 minutes. So you could listen to an episode on the ride to work or the ride home from work or whenever. We're on episode 6. We haven't had one that's fallen into that time. And it's because there's so much awesome content. And I don't want to cut people short that are sharing their time and their knowledge. And this is nothing short of that. So it's another awesome episode. And I think we're going to have to change it to a timeline whenever. But to get people on this podcast and share their best practices and share what they're doing. And we've got some great school districts coming up in the upcoming weeks. If you want to be on the podcast, and you don't necessarily need to be from Missouri, but we'd like to showcase as much as we can about what the great things are going on in Missouri. But if you're in a surrounding state or you want to come on, you want to talk about something really cool that we can share, absolutely get us a message or a note. You can email me, Josh, JOSH at BeAwesome, BEAU, S as in Sam, M as in Mary.com. And we'll get you a conversation and figure out how to get you on. We are 7/10 of the way in becoming in the top 10% of podcasts from a ratings and review standpoint. Less than 10% of all podcasts. There's 3.6 million podcasts out there today. Less than 10% have 10 or more 5-star rating and reviews on podcast platforms. So if you are listening to this, and we have quite a few listening, we've got over 1,000 downloads on our first 5 episodes. So if you are listening and you like our podcast and it's worthy of a 5-star rating and review, please hit that 5-star rating. Please give us a review. It does help us. It builds us credibility when people look up podcasts to see what people think and what they're going to do to give their time. If we haven't earned that 5-star rating and review, let us know. Send me an email. Let's have a conversation, or wait and give us a little bit more of a chance. We're only 6 episodes in, but we want to bring a gold standard level podcast for facility professionals and share all the awesome that's happening in Missouri. So if you can do that, or if you need help on how to do that, just send me a note. I'll send you a link and show you how to do it. But we appreciate everyone listening and taking the time. We're having a lot of fun, and we're going to bring another guest here next week for you. And in the meantime, I hope you have an awesome week. Thank you.